All right, today's technical session number T-40, going to be going over mobile operating systems and the most popular versions we have available to us at this time. We're going to be talking about the iOS, Android, and for the 10 people who still use it, the Windows Phone. So we will be getting into these market share and various aspects and attributes that they have in common and what makes them different. So our objectives are to describe at a very high level similarities and differences between the mobile operating systems and other operating systems. Compare and contrast the most widely used mobile operating systems, including Android, iOS, and Windows, and include their most common functions and features. BSMs we want to keep in mind for this particular technical session be communication, as that is critically important in team environments, and IT is a team sport, as we often say. And we want to maintain that growth mindset and understand that the ecosystem that we're operating in is continually growing and changing, and we want to be able to grow and change with it. We can't be stagnant in IT as things are continually evolving. All right, first we're going to get into the rise of the mobile operating system. Initially with the mobile devices like phones and stuff like that, remember we started out with the big satchel phones that literally were like a messenger bag you carried over your shoulder that had this huge battery pack inside of it. And then, you know, if you got into your car, you could plug it into the cigarette lighter in the car and keep that sucker charged. It operated off of an analog signal, didn't have a whole lot of functionality just beyond the telephone aspect of it. And then it began to evolve a little bit. We started getting pagers where you could, you know, punch in the number, you could send messages, as Marvin is is often fond of remembering the 143 or I love you with the pagers. So that was like kind of the beginning of texting and emojis, even to that fact. And then we started to evolve into texting, and over generations of these phones, we start to demand more and more usability and functionality and attributes to these operating systems. They have to become more robust. They must have more computing power. They must be capable of many more things as we move forward. I mean, it evolved quickly into the BlackBerry, where you could send and receive emails, which was the bane of many office workers' existence, because now you were in a 24-hour work environment where you could send and receive emails absolutely any time of day or night, and we're expected to monitor these things. Then now all of a sudden we start getting games, we start getting social media apps. All this fun stuff is completely evolving onto these phones, and they're becoming mostly all-in-one devices where we will use this for about 90% of our computing or internet usage. And then we'll go to a computer just for some like heavier lifting, like if we're going to be doing, you know, typing up a document or working on spreadsheets and stuff like that. But you can still do those on some phones. It's just not as user friendly yet. So we would still go to the computers for that. But for the most part, it becomes a relative all-in-one device for the average consumer. Now, how do mobile operating systems differ from their desktop counterparts? Predominantly, your operating systems on desktops rely mostly on keyboard and mouse interfaces. Also, because the touchscreen on computers, it can be, it's less efficient and can be more tiring over the course of a long day, going like this constantly on your screen versus, you know, small movements of your mouse. On a mobile operating system, the predominant way that you will function will be through the touchscreen interface. That would be, you know, they would give you a digital keyboard. Instead of a mouse clicking on the icons, you'd use your fingers to do so. So that is like two of the biggest differences right there. Then you get into limited power supplies with the batteries in the phone. These are small batteries. They don't hold a whole lot of charge, even though they are rechargeable. So we need to take that into account when we're talking about processors, because the more processing power you have, the more battery and power it is going to require in order to make that possible. You have limited RAM capabilities because the RAM itself is not expandable within the phone. It is already soldered onto the board itself inside. Now, phones predominantly can support both Wi-Fi and cellular communication. There are some desktops that do the same, laptops that do the same. But even today, now desktops support Wi-Fi technology. It comes pretty much built in for the most part on all standard PCs. So this was not always the case. It used to be a aftermarket upgrade you would have to make to your system. And desktops predominantly, up until recently, like we were just talking about, either operated off of cable or Ethernet. Questions so far? All right. Back to the pie chart. Current operating system market share. With a crushing 70.24%, you have Android. Because Android operates on a multitude of different phones, and it is a Linux-based operating system. So they control a huge portion of the market share, and I believe this is a global market. And then you get into iOS, holding down about 28% of the market itself, doing much better than its desktop counterpart, where Microsoft owns about, what was it, close to 90%, 85% of the market share. They're able to hold on a little bit more here with the iPhone. And then you have Windows up there with what, 0.07%. And then you have Symbian and BlackBerry barely holding on to the chart. And then you have around 1.2%, which are unknown, which are a lot of homegrown operating systems built off of Linux that are starting to gain some popularity now. But we'll see how they develop over time. No, Ranzi, this actually, I think, is a world chart. So that's why Android is around 70%, because when you start getting into Asian and African and Latin markets, Android is the dominant force by far.
I think iPhones are too expensive for people in America. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of money, like, you know.
On the primary market, I would agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I would agree with you. It is a lot of money in the primary market. So, but there are other reasons why as well.
What would you say is the reason for the significant price difference between the two?
Marketing. Honestly, that is part of it. Android is on a multitude of different systems. Like you have your Samsungs, your Nokias, your, if you want to list off a few Android providers, I mean, there are several different phone manufacturers that utilize the Android platform. Android is an open source system which anybody can use and build upon, because they're based off of Linux. They have to promote their source code. This is why it is much easier to sideload applications onto it, get third-party apps in there and all that stuff. They don't have to go through the process that you do to get onto an Apple phone. It's a little bit different. So the open source nature of it allows for significantly more competition within the market. So it's more of an issue of the price of the individual company's phones. Now with the Apple, the software is proprietary to the Apple device itself.
Okay.
They don't farm it out to anybody. They don't let anybody else utilize it. It is strictly in their ecosystem. And that is part of why there is that price difference. And Apple is trying to, historically was trying to create a all-in-one system. Like if you have the Apple TV and you have a Mac and you have, whatever, all of this stuff talks to each other really easily. It just works, so that was one of the main things they were going for. And then, Initially, they were pretty good innovators, although the innovation level of them has dropped off significantly after the passing of Steve Jobs. Now they're more just kind of followers in the market rather than innovators in the market. So we'll see how that affects their price points going forward. Yes, Alan, did you have your hand up?
Kind of figured it out myself.
Okay.
So like as far as performance and everything like that, there's really relatively no difference between the two of them.
It depends on what you're talking about. Like there are some aspects of Android that are going to operate much better than the iPhones, and there's aspects of the iPhones that are going to operate better than Android. And like I was talking about with computers, when you're talking about the Mac people versus the Windows people, it generally comes down to the Ford Chevy argument with car guys. You know, you have the car people that are just like, you know, they have the diehard Ford guys that like, you know, Chevy is junk. I would never drive anything like that. And you have the same thing on the other side with the Chevy guys saying about Ford. A lot of that runs the same in the computing world with regards to Apple and, you know, Android or Apple and Windows. You see those exact same arguments taking place. And they both have their pluses and their minuses. My personal view with the Mac computers, I got into them because of longevity. I got tired of every 18 months, my Windows desktop frying out and becoming completely unusable. So I tried a Mac. My first Mac lasted me 11 years and is still being used by my son right now. Wow. And I finally bought this one just because it was time to upgrade a little bit. And I use it for the, you know, this is the media hub for my entire house. I have all my movies, music, everything on here, and my entire house communicates with this computer. So it gets heavy use. And it's the last one was 11 years old before I just went ahead and upgraded, but it still works. And my son uses it for school. So that was my personal reason for doing it. Because yeah, it's a little more expensive, but it's still cheaper than buying 10 Windows computers.
Right, right.
So that was my personal reason for it. But everybody has their, you know, their differences in how they use them. Yes, Mark.
Was there a real big learning curve switching from Windows over to Apple to the Mac?
I mean, a little bit, but not huge. I mean, what, you know, because they do use similar key structures and stuff like that. Like instead of hitting Control C and Control V for printing, I would hit Command C and Command V. The biggest learning curve was the mouse, going to this like multi-touch mouse. But if you don't like it, you can actually use a Bluetooth Windows mouse, no problem. And it'll take it. So you can still have the 2-button mouse if that's something you prefer, or you can use the one they give you. So, but like learning to use their multi-touch mouse and stuff like that, that was some of the biggest learning curves that I had. I mean, it is minor differences. The main thing is if like you're a big gamer, Macs don't work for you. Because most video games on computers and desktops and stuff like that, they don't portal over to Apple for some reason. They're starting to do better with that, but still, most recent iterations, you're not going to see it. I mean, I think just now they're starting to make it where the Macs are VR capable, although they're also talking about releasing their own VR headsets, which means they're only going to be capable with their own headsets likely. So that part of the ecosystem, I do not like. So any other questions? All right. There we go. All right. So many companies will alter or create operating systems specifically for the devices they are constructing, partially because they want to get the most out of those devices. They want to be able to use those devices to their maximum capabilities. So your device may have, you know, better cameras, or it may have a faster processor or things like that. And you want to be able to mold that operating system to that particular device. Most notably for that would be the Apple or iOS, which was built specifically for the Apple phones. So it does maximize that hardware as much as possible. Then you get to the Google Androids, which is more of an open source system, but it is able to be adjusted, and you can take, you know, add features to it or take away features as you see fit to best support the phones that you're building. But if you want, you can actually clean out the operating system on an Android phone and upload your own operating system to it. If you don't like what they've done with it, you can actually use somebody else's. There's a lot of open source ones out there that you can utilize and manipulate them yourself. Yes, Janina, did you have your hand up? Okay. Windows Phone OS, this came about around the time of Windows 8, as we showed those tiles. And what was the name of that interface that they had on the Windows 8? Man, my amnesia's kicking in already early. What did they call that? Metro what?
Metro UI.
There you go, Metro UI. All right, that's that fun operating, interface that has all those tiles and stuff like that. And that was where they kind of dumbed down the desktop operating system to operate more like a mobile operating system because they wanted to have that seamless functionality between the two. Unfortunately, neither worked very well and both failed. So they moved on. The mobile phone, the Windows phones are kind of a thing of the past. You don't really see them very often. It is extremely rare to come across a Windows phone, but they are still out there. And I guess even more rare to come across a Windows 8 user that has not upgraded to 10. And then you have some others out there in the ether. You have BlackBerry OS, Symbian, HP Web, Ada, and Migo. All right, iOS, only found on Apple products, as we discussed a little bit earlier. Built on the same foundation as the Apple desktop OS, it is based on Unix itself, which is an extremely stable architecture to build upon. It is closed source, meaning they do not allow access to the source code to anyone. If you want to develop applications for Apple, you need to use the software that they provide for you, which is the software development kit or SDK. Yes, you do need to know that. So you have the software development kit, which allows you to build apps and then submit them for approval to be put into the App Store itself. Apple is very restrictive about third-party apps coming in from places not on their App Store. Questions so far? All right. Android, made by Google, built on a Linux kernel. It has a core set of libraries written in JavaScript. And the operating system itself is maintained by the Open Handset Alliance. It is open source, and it means that technicians have access to all of the code, allowing them to be a little more efficient with app development and things like that, and how to interact with the various pieces of hardware on the systems itself. And the versions that they release, they tend to go in alphabetical order based on types of candy. So you have, like Jelly Bean and Kit Kat and Lollipop and Marshmallow and Nougat. So it all goes in alphabetical order. This confused the heck out of me before because I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't really care to have a cell phone. And, people were telling me, it's like, oh yeah, I upgraded to Nougat. I'm like, how the heck do you know which version you're on? Not even realizing that they were going in alphabetical order. The more you know. So now I am aware of it. They upgrade based in alphabetical order. More companies are kind of taking this approach. Like, Apple has the thing where they did the big cats and then they were doing the mountain ranges and stuff like that. So now we're to this, so you know which version you're on, as opposed to going like Windows with like Windows 10, Windows 57, Windows 63. So you know exactly which order you're going in. So this one just, I guess, makes it a little more fun. But that's how Android goes forward with it. All right, next, Windows Phone OS. Proprietary, closed source operating system based on the Windows NT kernel. And developers create mobile applications and provide them to the Windows Store. So, Apple, what's the name of Apple's store?
App Store.
App Store, very good. All right. What's Google's?
Google Play.
Google Play. That's the primary one. And then we get to Windows, where it's just the Windows Store. All right. Other operating systems that are kind of out there, you may hear about them, or in very rare occasions, you may come across them. But just to kind of sum up the history of it, you had BlackBerry OS. They were kind of the big dog in the market for a while there because they were the first ones to kind of really integrate texting and email into their systems, and then giving you like a full QWERTY keyboard on your phone before the advent of touchscreens. So, I mean, they were really industry leaders there for a while. Fell off, terminated in around 2013. And it was developed by Research in Motion, and the beauty of them is they were almost immune to viruses. So pretty robust system. And then you had Symbian, which was terminated in 2012, so no longer supported. And then you had HP Web OS, which was formerly Palm OS. If many of you remember the early iterations of the smartphone, you had the Palm Pilots, which made you kind of force you to learn these weird hieroglyphics to be able to actually write in there. So like they had crazy little ways that like the system would recognize alphabets. Then you have Bada, which was terminated in 2014. That was a Samsung one prior to them going over to Android themselves. It only operated on 3 types of phones though. And you had Migo, which died in about 2011 and was replaced by Tizen. Tizen is pretty awesome. They tried to get a foothold in the mobile operating market, weren't able to do so really good, but now they are one of the world leaders on smart TVs as far as developing operating systems on smart televisions and also in-car entertainment systems. So they were not successful in the mobile operating system, but were able to take that technology and push it somewhere else and actually become a very major player. Windows Store was called Windows Store. So, all right. Next. These are the typical devices you will see these on. You have the Windows Mobile, which was pretty much only on the Nokia Lumia. iOS, which is on the iPhone and the iPads, and briefly on the iPods when they had the touchscreen iPods as well. Then you have Android, which is on Samsung, Nexus, LG, Amazon Fire TV, HTC, Sony, and many others as well. But these are the biggest players in that market. All right. Apple versus Windows versus Google. So we're going to kind of go over each of these features here real quick, just to kind of go through them. And then we have, first off, Apple and Windows closed source. They did not allow anybody else to see their source code. You had to get software development kits in order to be able to build applications to place into their marketplaces. And that is also called proprietary software itself. It is licensed to other people's use, but is kept within the control of the original publisher. Did you realize that you do not even own the operating system on your phones? You are licensed to it, which is why you have to sign that license agreement. So at any given time, if they so choose, they can remove that license from you and shut off your operating system on your phone. You own the phone itself, but not the software upon it. So, get to Android, and that is open source software where developers can have access to the source code in order to develop applications and further develop the operating system itself. It is licensed to the community to be further developed, shared, and sometimes marketed. And examples of that are Android. Next, application source. You have the Windows Store, App Store for Apple, and the Google Play Store for Google. Allows you to download various applications for entertainment, productivity, and a variety of other things. Banking, finance, business, organization, tons of things that you can utilize these applications for, and getting broader by the day. Social media, it's a big one. All right, screen orientation. Mobile devices inside them have wonderful things that allow us to change the orientation of our screen, be it portrait, which is vertical, or landscape if you turn it horizontally. So inside the phone, they have an accelerometer and a gyroscope. The gyroscope sensor in there tells the phone what orientation it is sitting at, and the accelerometer will tell the phone any change in velocity of the phone. This is helpful with regards to GPS systems and things like that. Not to mention, if you're watching a video and you turn it sideways, you get the full screen view rather than the small preview screen that you would normally get. And it allowed for the advent of a bunch of games and many other applications as well. Questions so far? All right. Types of touchscreens. There are two that we need to be very aware of. You have the old school resistive touchscreens, which rely on pressure. How much pressure is being applied to that particular screen when you're at a grocery store or something like that. If you ever use a credit card and they ask you to sign it, those for the most part are resistive touch. They are responding to the pressure applied to those screens. The downside of these is they require constant calibration for them to be able to function properly. Have you ever gone to sign on a touchscreen and where you touch and then the mark is like about an inch off? So it's responding further away from where you're actually touching the screen. It's because those screens themselves are out of calibration. And that is a constant thing that needs to happen with these resistive touchscreens. Also, over time, it requires more and more pressure for it to pick up on you signing. So it kind of accelerates the degradation of the screen itself. So it starts getting more and more damaged as you ride on it over time because more and more pressure is required for it to pick up on it. Next, we have capacitive touch screens. Now, overwhelming majority of smartphones out on the market now are capacitive touch. They rely essentially on the connection, like I'm trying to think of it. There's a electromagnetic connection between, when you touch it, so it responds to that and is able to recognize that movement on the screen itself, which is why sometimes when you're wearing gloves or things like that, it does not pick up on the fact that you're touching the screen because there is no connectivity. There is no, it doesn't complete the circuit, in the capacitors on the screen, allowing for it to pick up on your touching it. So that's why you have to, if you're buying gloves, they actually make gloves now that are touchscreen capable so that it will carry that charge through the material to the screen so you can actually interact with it. Now, calibration errors. That's essentially when you touch it, nothing happens, or the device, where you're touching it is off from where the device is recognizing that touch. With resistive touch screens, you would have to go through a calibration process. With capacitive, the calibration is built in. A lot of times you just do a reboot, it auto calibrates and it's good to go. Very rarely will you have to manually calibrate a capacitive touch screen. Questions so far with that? All right. Uh-oh. Next, we will talk about positioning and geolocation. Geolocation provides the relative and absolute positioning of a device from the viewpoint of the planet and space. Two ways we can do this. You can use a magnetometer or the GPS, or global positioning system. Now, the magnetometer allows it to sense magnetic fields and acts somewhat like a compass, so it can tell the orientation of where your phone is pointing and tell you where north is. And it gives you instant access to the direction in which the top of the smartphone itself is pointing. Next, we have the global positioning system, which allows you to detect your position based on, with respect to the man-made latitude and longitude markings on the globe itself through triangulation. GPS systems utilize a network of satellites orbiting globe, and based off of pings that are sent down from that satellite itself, there is a device in your phone that will essentially do some calculations based on those pings, and based on your orientation or the time at which it's taking to receive those pings, it can tell where you are within, I think it's about 20 feet. So based on which satellites you're talking to and how long it takes for you to receive these signals. Now, it requires 3 satellites to be able to tell where you are located. So to give you longitude and latitude, you need at least communication with at least 3 satellites. Bear in mind, you are only receiving, you are not talking to those satellites. They are just sending out repetitive pings. And the calculation as to where you're located is done in the receiver in your phone. So 3 satellites, you can get longitude and latitude. And if you can actually get a 4th satellite, you can determine altitude. So you can determine how high you are. Does anybody want to take a guess as to how many GPS satellites we have orbiting the globe at this time?
2,000.
2,000? That would be impressive. That would absolutely be impressive. No, not 3. That wouldn't be enough. So there are actually 31 GPS satellites orbiting the globe right now, 27 of which are active at any given time. So not all of them are active at any given time, but if one of them should fail, they will move another one of the inactive ones into place in order to replace one that has failed. Now, this is essentially proprietary to the US. A lot of other countries like the EU has their own GPS system. India has their own GPS system version of it. China, I believe, has their own version of it. So several countries have their own versions of the GPS system. They operate a little bit differently. But the main one we are concerned with here is the one in the US. And then we have 31 satellites, 27 of which are active at any given time. Requires 3 to give longitude and latitude, and a 4th to determine altitude or height. Questions on that so far?
Do we need to know how many satellites? Like, do I need to write that down?
That question has come up. I don't think they're mean enough to ask you about, like, for networking, you need to know how many the US has, how many China has, how many the EU have, how many Russia has. I mean, you actually have to know all the different global positioning systems, how many satellites they have active and stuff like that in their names. So it's a little bit more in depth. Yes, Alan.
We still use the magnetometer.
Magnetometer?
Magnetometer. That's how you
Yes.
pronounce it. Magnetometer.
Magnetometer. Yes, that is essentially like a compass in your phone. So say, for instance, you do not have like line of, because the satellites operate off of line of sight. So you need to have clear view of sky to be able to get a solid GPS signal. So if you do not have that, you can utilize the magnetometer, which will give you magnetic north. Now, some of you may be saying, what if I'm driving through a place like New York City and I don't have clear view of the sky, from multiple angles to be able to utilize the GPS system? How does that work? I'm glad you asked the question. All right. So in that case, they will actually utilize the assistance of cell phone towers. So it's GPS assisted, where they will also check which cell towers you're pinging off of. And that will help with, like, if you can only get 2 satellites and you're pinging off of a particular cell tower, they can give a rough estimation as to where you are. I don't know if you've ever had that case where you're looking at your GPS and it shows you on a different road than you actually are on, and then all of a sudden it'll shift over to where you actually are. Yep. And that's because it didn't have clear contact with the satellites at that time, and it was using cell towers to help kind of figure out where you were roughly. All right. Geo tracking. Both the iOS and Android devices record the location of the device periodically and send this information to a central location. So if you are a frequenter of certain stores and those stores pay Android and Apple for that information, they will go, yes, absolutely. Yes, this person goes there all the time. You might want to advertise to them for your store credit card, because obviously they like to patron your business. This is quite controversial, obviously, because they are tracking and people do feel it is a violation of their privacy for this to happen. Yes, Janina.
Is that like when you come out of store and you'll see like an advertisement on your phone, like how was your experience? Is it something like that?
Oh yeah, that's part of it. And then if you sign up for their application and you allow that app, then, you know, like if you sign up for a Sears app or something like that, and you go to Sears and then, you know, you've downloaded that app to the phone and you said, yeah, sure, I don't mind if you track me, I don't care. Then yes, they'll send you like, well, how was your service? You know, how was this? How was that? Interestingly, some stores were tracking not only how frequently you went there, but how often you spent money there and how much money you spent there. And so your service level that you would receive at the store may vary depending on the money that you spend there. So like if you spent, like you bought several appliances that, you know, we'll just continue to use Sears since they're pretty much not around anymore. So say you bought like, you know, $15,000 worth of appliances for your new house that you were building at Sears. Well, that would make you like a platinum level, you know, member for that store. So if they notice that you're in the store, they may send the general manager over to kind of welcome you and see if you need any help or something like that. So they would play to that fact and allow them to go for, you know, the higher paying patrons and try to continue to get that business. So there's lots of different ways that they can utilize this stuff within applications. Again, it is controversial at this point. I personally auto no on any app that wants to track me. And if you ever want to know if the location services are being checked on your phone to see if you're being tracked at this given moment, look for the little arrow up in the top of your screen. If that is lit up, you are being tracked. So thankfully, they turn that little icon on to let you know, yes, we are watching what you're doing at this point. And it could be any application, it could be the phone provider themselves, it could be any reason, but they use a lot of this geo-tracking data. They collect it to understand your patterns better, to better market to you. All right, geo-tagging. Similar information to geo-tracking, but you can add this to various forms of media, such as photos. So like when you take a photo somewhere, it will add metadata into that photo that says where that photo was taken. You ever upload a bunch of your photos and all of a sudden it tells you, you were here, 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 and here on a map. So you can look on a map and see exactly where you were when you took those photos. That is because of geo-tagging and the metadata that is embedded into these photos when they are taken. They know what time of day it was, when it was taken, and where it was taken. Yes, Rienzi.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to say something kind of crazy, but I saw on To Catch a Predator that they can actually that predators can find your children by, like, you know, the pictures that you post on Facebook or whatever social media.
Because of
They
the
can,
metadata embedded.
yeah, they can find your
Mhm.
location and things like that, just to, you know, like
Yes.
FYI for people with kids.
Yes, a lot of, you can also, there are ways you can scrub the metadata from your photos. And I believe there are applications where you can, like in your phones, I think you can turn off the geo tracking or geotagging on your photos so that it does not embed that data on there. The same goes true for DSLR cameras and stuff like that. You can turn off the metadata so it only saves the photo, not the location, time, and all that fun stuff. So there is that aspect as well. Also, geotagging is a good thing to kind of remember locations. One of the easiest ways, if you're one of those people, I will never admit to this fact that it has happened to me at least 100 times in my life, that where you park your car, then you come back later and you forget where you parked. Especially at, you know, big locations like a mall, worse yet, an airport, like come back from a flight, like you had to go somewhere for 2 or 3 days, come back and there's 5,000 cars in the parking lot. You can't remember which one you parked next to. Well, on your phone in the map section, you can actually drop a pin right where you are. So you can sit there, pull it up, drop a pin right here, and it will allow you to, when you walk away, the pin stays there. And then when you open your maps again, it'll show you where that pin is. So when you get back to where you are, you just open up your map and then you have a pin dropped right where your car is. So nice little life hack for those people who lose their car very often. So, all right. Next, Wi-Fi calling. Similar to VoIP. Does anybody know what VoIP is? It's like a weird word. What's VoIP?
Are you talking about voice over IP?
Oh, that thing. Yes. Voice over IP allows you to communicate over the internet rather than using the telephone lines themselves. It is a much more data efficient way of communication, but we can now utilize it with our cell phones as well. So when we get home, rather than chewing up our minutes, we can flip over to our home Wi-Fi and make calls on that. And a lot of times they'll do a handoff seamlessly without interrupting your phone call. Some, unfortunately, still will cut off your phone in order to be able to switch over to Wi-Fi itself. So this was a wonderful feature because voice over IP allowed us to communicate over the using our internet connection rather than having to have a separate phone line maintained for the household and pay extra for that. All right, now Wi-Fi calling uses an 802.11 connection. Don't worry, I know you're asking, well, what does 802.11 have to do with this? We will be getting into that next week when we talk about Wi-Fi protocols. And there are several flavors you need to be aware of. So this conserves the use of data and may provide better performance if you have a efficient Wi-Fi router at your house. All right. Questions so far with regards to Wi-Fi calling? Yes, Randy. You are muted now.
Can you repeat what VoIP stands for? Voice?
Voice over IP, or Internet Protocol.
Right.
Remember, we're talking about IPv4 and IPv6. Pretty much the same thing. It's basically pushing your voice over data lines rather than over the phone lines. All right. All right. Launcher or GUI. A launcher is the main screen when you turn your phone on. Like after you put your code in, or you do your facial recognition, all that fun stuff. That's the main screen that has all your applications upon it. It's called the launcher. And it is where you would locate and start other applications within the system. Overwhelmingly now they are GUI based. Or what does GUI stand for? Man, my amnesia is bad today.
Graphical user interface.
Absolutely, graphic user interface. And it adds additional items and menus and extra stuff and functionality to your phones. Now, Android allows the users to personalize that launcher, in many different ways. You may have them dedicated to specific functions or themes or things along that nature, like weather forecasts on the home page and stuff like that. Apple, on the other hand, wants the iOS look and feel at all times. If you want to change that on that, I would never recommend this, but jailbreaking is an option. So it
They got
is
the that new app where you can what is it called? You can move them around, and
what, you putting them in folders and stuff?
well, no, not the folders. It's something else called I can't think of the name of it. You can like have blocks, like so like the top part of your phone, you can have your calendar, and then in little other blocks underneath that you might have the time or somewhere where you're at, where you're
Is this the most recent iteration of the iOS?
Yeah, it's something
Widget.
brand new.
Widgets?
Yeah, it's called widget.
Widget.
Yeah, widgets,
Okay.
right.
I haven't done the most recent update on my phone, I'm not gonna lie.
I thought widgets were like the icons that we used for some reason.
It can be.
It depends on who you're talking to, because they may use the same term for different things with different people, unfortunately.
Yeah, terminology.
Yeah, unfortunately, like thankfully they don't, like it's, we brought out the new who's widgets. It's where we will organize everything and all your thingamajiggers go right in there, and then your whatchamacallits will not bother you too much when they're pinging your phone to let you know everything's happening. So, I'm waiting to that point where they run out of like these little names and they start going back to some old colloquialisms for it.
Yeah, they copied Android on this. They copied Android.
Well, yeah, and like I said, after the passing of Steve Jobs, they have become less innovators and more just copying and refining others. So, all right. Virtual assistants all now have their own kind of virtual assistants. Siri was first on the market, very novel. But unfortunately, with the closed atmosphere that Apple maintains, Siri hasn't grown up much. She hasn't evolved like the others have. So Siri's functionality is not as good as, say, Hey Google or Google Now. And Windows Phone, as well as Windows computers, have Cortana. For all you Halo fans, she was the virtual assistant for the Master Chief, and operates now on Windows itself. Now, here's the thing. How does my phone know when I'm asking it, Hey Google? How does it know? Go ahead, Luis.
Because it's listening to everything you say.
Correct. The microphone is always on, always listening. Now, there have been some real, they say it only initiates when it hears its wake words, but then it has the recording for 30 seconds prior, and then however long you're talking after. But there have been some really suspect incidences where things have happened and they were picked up on the so-called Siri and Hey Google. So me personally, I am a security-minded person. I don't have this feature turned on my phone. I have it initiated when I press and hold the button, and then I talk to it. But to each their own.
Well, how would you turn that off?
Because I don't want a microphone on and listening all the time in my life.
No. How would you turn it off?
Oh, it's in the settings. It's in the. I think he said why. No, yeah, it's in the settings. If you go to, like, if it's an Android, I believe it's your Hey Google settings, and then you have within Apple there is a Siri settings, and you can go in and adjust them in there. We can work through that a little bit as well as we go through. Understand I often stated, as I went down this path of studying cybersecurity and stuff like that, the more I learned, the more paranoid I became. Because, just the more you learn, the more questions you have, and then the more you get answers to those questions, the more it bothers you. So learning cybersecurity, that was, one of the things that I started to notice with. And, Marvin is a very open and trusting human being, but I'm working on it. So I am working on it. So when we get to cybersecurity, we'll talk a little bit more about security here a bit. But just based in mind, Alexa is another big one. Yeah, there was a lot of funny questions that you could ask these devices if they're pairing up. Now, wonderfully, I think Amazon is utilizing all of their connected systems like your Zoom, was it the Ring doorbells and video cameras and all that stuff that's all connected to Alexa. Amazon is being so magnanimous, they're going to use that to help extend your Wi-Fi range so you could share it with other people. So other people will be able to use your Wi-Fi through your Internet of Things devices that are connected to your Amazon things like Alexa or like the Ring, the cameras, the smoke detectors, all that stuff, creating an internet mesh network that it shares with everybody.
That's a 5G feature, right?
I'm not sure if that is a 5G feature specifically. It is an Internet of Things feature that they're building in. And that is the Internet of Things right now is one of the largest cybersecurity threats because there isn't a whole lot of security surrounding these particular devices. Like there was a casino in Las Vegas that was hacked because of an exploit that the hacker found to get into their networks through a thermometer in a fish tank. They were able to get into the network through the thermometer in the fish tank and were able to hack a casino.
Wow.
So lots of amazing things out there with security. Some of the innovative ways that these people find to bypass systems is absolutely amazing. All right, continuing on. We have the SDKs or software development kits, and then you have the ADKs, which is the application development kits. SDKs go with Apple, ADKs go with Android. So now Windows, you can utilize Visual Studio to build the applications on those. But again, not many people are really building applications for the Windows Phone. They're building them specifically for the Windows desktops and laptops. All right, so applications for Android can be created on Windows, Mac, and Linux by using the Android software development kits themselves. The Android Studio, is the other way they can do it. Once they're created, they are distributed in a format called the Android Application Package, or APK. Questions so far?
What did you say was used on desktops and
Well, the Visual Studio that they applications being built for Windows Mobile, because Windows mobile devices are very rare. You don't see them very much anymore. So developers aren't really building applications for the Windows mobile devices. They're building them for Windows applications on their desktops and their laptops. All right. Emergency alerts. Many of us have been woken up by these in the middle of the night. where all of a sudden you get this blaring alarm out of your phone out of nowhere. It lets you know, hey, there's a tornado. Hey, there's an amber alert. Hey, there's a silver alert. Does anybody know what a silver alert is?
Missing seniors.
Missing senior. So you do get silver alerts, local emergencies like floods, all that kind of stuff. We love these in Florida for the hurricanes because though we get 7, 8, 10 days notice, we still like to hang out. And we like to know exactly when it starts to flood because then we want to pack up and leave. Presidential alerts, that's kind of a recent one that was put in during the Obama administration, I believe. So that was added on. And basically to keep people up to date with any national or local emergencies going on at that time. All right, mobile payment service. US was way behind on this one. Back in the 90s, when the US was still playing around on analog systems, over in Europe and Asia, they had already moved over to digital and were utilizing these mobile payment systems where you could literally call into a vending machine and it would go ahead, bill your cell phone account, and you could get whatever you wanted out of that vending machine. They were utilizing these services for quite some time prior to us switching over to digital with the rest of the world and then having to play catch up on this particular service. But now we've expanded that to even including credit card payments and things like that. We're not even just using our cell phone provider anymore as that bank. We can use our debit cards. We can use our credit cards. We can get credit cards through these various companies if we wish and have them just purely digital on our phones. Most popular device we can use to accept credit card payments at this particular point would be Square. They have like little attachments that you can attach to a cell phone. You just go plug it in the bottom, and then you just swipe a credit card or insert the chip, and you can go ahead and receive direct payment from one person to another. For small businesses and trade show workers and stuff like this, this was such an awesome upgrade because nobody wanted to do the old carbon copy credit card thing anymore, and nobody trusts checks. So this allowed for the next evolution of that and not having to carry around a lot of cash. Google Pay is the proprietary one on Android, and it utilizes NFC or near field communication, which is a contactless form of payment. You just have to be within a few centimeters of the device itself to be able to transmit that particular code. Has anybody heard of the RFID blocking wallets and understand what that is for?
Yes, and I have one.
All right, you want to explain what it is and what it's for there, Mark?
Yeah, that the RFID is a radio frequency ID. And your guys need to know that your debit cards and your credit cards have that chip in there is RFID accessible. So somebody with an RFID reader can walk past you and get your information and keep it moving.
So they've created wallets that have a copper wire mesh built into them, which creates what's called a Faraday cage, which blocks signals. And this is a way for you to be able to protect your credit card information while walking around, so somebody can't just get close to you and pick up on all your credit card information. So with the cell phone form of payment, it's a little different because it still asks you to verify on your phone that you're accepting this charge. So you still have to accept it at that point. So that is the NFC or near field communication from like your excuse me, phone or smartwatch to a payment device. You have Google Pay for Android, you have Apple Pay for iOS, and then Samsung Pay is also an option itself. Where do you find one of what's, Romario?
Thing that blocks preventing somebody from just coming up to you and taking
you get most retailers sell them now. They've become very popular. It's becoming a common feature in wallets. You just need to look on the tags. Like I'm sure you can find it at Walmart or Target or Amazon or something like that. You just make sure to look and see if it's RFID blocking. And then they won't be able to access your credit cards and stuff like that.
Thank you.
No problem. We are here to make you more paranoid. All right. But is it paranoid if they are actually out to get you? So to wrap things up, we wanted to describe at a high level similarities and differences between mobile operating systems and other operating systems. We also wanted to compare and contrast the most widely used mobile operating systems, including Android, iOS, and Windows, and their most common features and functions. Are there any questions?